Good morning and welcome to the show. This is Smooth Breakfast on Smooth 98.1 and it's officially time for Freshly Pressed 91. My name is Valentine Ohu. I appreciate you for taking out time to join us for Freshly Pressed 91, a segment of Smooth Breakfast that brings you detailed analysis of our newspaper stories. Joining me this morning is Ugo Dre. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. How you doing?
I'm
Always
very
good
well,
to see
thank you.
you.
Yes, always a pleasure. And Mr. C, good morning.
Good morning, Valentine. Good
Welcome.
morning, Ugo. Good morning, Lagos.
Yes.
Morning,
Well done, well done. Mr. C is at Mr. C on Instagram, on all socials. Ugo Dre is at Ugo Dre. Thank you so much for joining me. Please join the conversation by sending messages through WhatsApp and YouTube. WhatsApp number is 0809 444 0981. 0809 444 0981. YouTube, Smooth FM Lagos. Subscribe and follow the conversation. Now, this morning, we have stories to go through. The first, Mr. C talks about the NBC Act. The Nigerian government seeks to amend the NBC Act to want control over online broadcasting. Here, the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, is waxing lyrical in some sense and actually just showing his might in proposing that Section 2C of the bill should be included, that to cover online and internet broadcast surveillance in some sense and regulation. Although the criticism, first of all, the consequence of that has been highlighted by some people saying that if this goes ahead, it will be stifling, it will become a move to stifle media in general and prevent free speech. What are your thoughts, please?
Okay, thank you, Valentine. So, quick backtrack. The House of Representatives is currently holding public hearings as part of the process to amend the Act setting on the Nigerian Broadcasting Commission. Now, at the latest public hearing, the Minister of Information did submit a proposal that online platforms be included in Section 2 as part of the entities that should be regulated. And as Valentine has already said, there's already strident opposition to that submission. Now, consistently in Nigeria, through the various regimes which have been adverse to criticism of their bad performance or poor performance, there has always been an attempt, and in some cases, measures taken to stifle or reduce the access the common man or the public has to criticize. But we must remember that some of these proposals might actually be in conflict with the Constitution. Luckily, the courts are back in session, and I expect that some of the latest moves by the government will be challenged in court. Now, even this submission is debatable because, first of all, you want to regulate an online platform. That in itself is a legal nightmare. Now, assuming you can get over that, we need to understand this. The Constitution gives us certain guaranteed fundamental human rights. For example, the right to gather together peacefully. Before the advent of technology, that right was envisaged in a physical gathering of people. With the advent of technology, I can be on Twitter, the man in Yola can be on Twitter, the man in Uyo can be on Twitter, the man in Dutse can be on Twitter, and we're in 4 or 5 different locations. Twitter enables us to congregate together, enables more people to congregate together and share their views. Also, under the Constitution, we're allowed to express our opinions. Now, you have a leader who is clearly pro-government. You have an NBC that is supposedly an independent regulator, but has so far shown that it is anything but independent. So when you regulate an online platform, and then the online platform allows views that are in opposition to the government's position, you have this so-called NBC or so-called regulator now sanctioning them. And I say no. So we must fight this proposal because for now at best it is a proposal, it is a suggestion. The House of Reps is not bound to accept the suggestion, and we encourage bodies like SERAP and well-meaning legal practitioners to challenge some of these provisions.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Mr. C, for mentioning those strong points. Actually, one of the lawmakers mentioned that that this is going to, amongst most of the things you mentioned, also take away the regulatory powers of not necessarily. I mean, move them veer them far away from being regulators to, you know.
The stooges to
Thank
the
you
minister,
to
the
the
minister.
federal government.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
And one of my senior colleagues had said something last week that was quite apt. Made a few suggestions. Said first of all, that was on the advent of the ban on Twitter. It said first of all, NBC is almost losing sight of their responsibilities, and mentioned some of the things that they should be reminded to uphold as part of their activities, in support of the media, not against the media. He said first of all, focus on stifling of free speech and government accountability. Second, poor remuneration in the industry, because that's what's happening even before COVID. Inability of stations to pay staff, COVID effects as well. Things like lack of investment and training in the media industry, huge debts owed stations by advert agencies. Who talks about this? If you measure that, I mean, vis-a-vis the role of NLC, how they fight for labor unions, NBC is supposed to be playing that role for media houses, including dwindling revenue for radio and TV stations, owners' knowledge or lack of it thereof of the media industry, because you have owners who probably know nothing about it and have a power to make certain decisions.
So very quickly, I'm going to respond to something you just said.
Mm.
The NBC as a regulator should not be fighting for people's rights.
Okay.
It should just lay down the rules and regulations.
And ensure due process is followed.
And then the bodies, the respective radio stations, houses, media houses, should come together, band together, and collectively pursue their collective interests.
But ultimately, focus on quality.
Just to add, Val, far from even any of these things, I think the onus lies on the National Assembly not to ever allow this to happen. It should never happen. And these are the only people that can stop this. The NBC will only do what is within the provision of its regulation, of its act. So if the government is successful at including, the provision in the act that allows, online businesses or online news platforms to sort of register, then that is, something that the NBC would have no choice but to implement. So this should never ever happen. I'm not even looking at this from the point of view of maybe trying to ban Twitter or stifle free speech or whatever. Val, this is basically at the heart of innovation in Nigeria. They are basically going after small business. They're basically going after people who want to seek, a source of living online. Why do you have to go and register or go and speak to NBC or apply to NBC because you want to start an online, platform? Why do you have to do that? And these are some of the sort of things that you hear and you wonder why, the government is coming up with policies that sound really malicious, because this is what it is. It's as if they're just calling your bluff. They're telling you, look, you know what? Hey, we've done it Twitter one. This is the next thing we're going to do. You guys have not seen anything. It just sounds really malicious and quite upsetting. So it's disappointing to see things like this, honestly, in 21st century. See Minister of Information, coming out and saying things like, we're going to come up with a law that's going to ban, or that's going to, before you come up online, you have to go register with NBC.
Yeah, but seeking to give some regulatory powers to the NBC on its own, it's nice, it's good, because somehow you're able to govern the spread of information and communication within the area of your company, your surveillance, right?
Yes.
So to speak. But the issue I have at some point in that section that they're proposing, their proposal really, is giving powers to the minister of the federation, to perform regulatory functions. That would, in some sense, content the government to use that power, the power against the
opposition. Exactly.
Yes,
and that's why I said I'm not even focused on the political side of this, because we all know that's supposed to try it. My point is, look at it from the investment side, from the commercial side. Why are you stifling businesses' innovation just because you're trying to get at the political detractors with political opponents? It just doesn't make any sense. And it's not like you're going to be here forever, right? 2-3 years time, it's an election. Who knows? Perhaps a new government. And so what's the new government going to do laws like this? Are they going to use it against you? So I don't know how they come up with things like this. I do hope that it doesn't fly.
Ugodre, thank you so much for lending that thought in support of Mr. C's allusions as well. But the Guardian newspaper reports on this story, queries the federal government's planned sale of the TCN, Transmission Company of Nigeria. They said it's a way to stop subsidizing the sector. They said they've taken this move to complete the power sector privatization. This is a good move. Some people call it a ticking time bomb.
I don't know. I kind of read this article and Mr. C and I were discussing downstairs, and I'm like, there's maybe, in due respect of the guys that we interviewed, probably, weren't fully aware of maybe the subject matter efficiently. So now trying to mix that with some of the failures of, the existing privatization of the private sector I think is kind of wrong. Can do that. Let's, try. So the TCN currently is the only value chain in the power sector that is not privatized. So you have the generation companies, those that are privatized, and then you have the distribution companies that are privatized. Now, but the elephant in the room is the transmission company, because without the transmission company, the grid can't work. So today you hear that you have maybe 10 to 12, megawatts of power generated in the country, but we can only wheel 5,000. So what does that tell you? It tells you there's a huge gap, right, in the grid capacity. So to solve some of those problems, you need massive investments in that value chain. So in this kind of country that we're in, this kind of economy, which private sector investor will invest in the government-owned asset? That's not going to happen. Now, also, does the government have money? Do they have money to actually invest in that value chain? No, I think it's just simple. So the logical thing to do is to find ways to privatize that value chain of the sector. Now, I don't think privatization is a silver bullet. I don't think anybody who thinks it's a silver bullet really needs to check where it's not. It doesn't solve all the problems, but it's better than having government own these things. And to be honest, Val, with investments in that value chain, that's the good side of things. I know these things because I've invested in the sector as well. So we know that there are areas where there is indeed generation capacity, but there are limitations to wheel. So for example, you probably live in some parts of Lagos. You see on the other side there's a lot of light, and on the other side there's a lot of reasons why that happens. Wheeling capacity. So there are limitations, and because there are limitations to then some people just don't have light, and these things happen because there's lack of investment that should actually be ahead Lekki Ajah areas. They're expanding on a daily basis. A lot of people are moving down to that side. So what is happening in terms of the transmission capacity there? Are we putting in enough investment to then give our power to people that are moving? No. So I think that's why sometimes you think, a lot of people will say, look, let's just privatize this thing. Now, there are downside issues here that you need to contend with. Of course, your grid is a national security asset. So that's why people have been very careful. Because, you've seen what's happening in the US, cyber warfare.
Private owners.
Exactly. So those are some of the things that you worry about. But there are ways around these things. So I'm for full privatization, not just in the power sector, any sector at all that you have the government running, because the governments have always proven to be inefficient when it comes to running things like this.
Provided the privatization is transparent, provided the privatization exercise is transparent,
and all parties are carried along.
Definitely.
Because most of the concerns that were raised really by the opposition, these thoughts, is really around staff. How this you always give references to NEPA before PET and Nigerian Airways and all that. So staff are not paid off and left without any sort of compensation. Let's go to this next story, Mr. C. No national law in roots. Final. Actually, tell Buhari. I was waiting for this. This is a story from this newspaper. The human rights lawyer, senior advocate of Nigeria, said this only covers the north. He said Nigeria has no national law on grazing roots. Remember, I touched this.
Yes. Okay, so very quickly for our listeners who are not familiar, the president in an interview with Rights TV last week did indicate that he had instructed the Attorney General of the Federation to obtain a copy of some purported national grazing law.
Gazette.
Yeah, the Gazette it's a law that has been published by the government press. Now, since then, a lot of lawyers have weighed in on this on this very subject matter, and just a morning, like Valentine said, we discussed this. There is no national grading law. And it is sad that the president of this country is being misadvised by his chief legal advisor. And that since that point, having his attention drawn to the fact that there is no such law, he's been unable to come out and confirm to his principal, the president, or to the public that in fact there is no such law. His silence would suggest that he's in fact still looking for a law that does not exist.
Do you suppose that's the case, or he already knows but
kinda
doesn't want to
sounds
do
like-
anything about it? Because I was going to ask him, Mr. C, I was going to ask you to subscribe to the Senior Advocates of Nigeria, suggesting that Malami be sanctioned.
Yeah, no, I did say this on Monday, and I'm going to repeat the call that look, Malami is a representative of the Nigerian legal profession, and he only occupies the office of the Attorney General of the Federation because he's a legal practitioner. Now, as a legal practitioner, you are expected to display at all times a high degree of knowledge and competence. I truly cannot say that in the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks, the Attorney General of the Federation has displayed either knowledge or competence. And it begs the question why he's still in office. Now, if they ask him to defend his recent positions and utterances, and he's unable to do so, then he should take steps to salvage the reputation of the profession.
Is that they're silent?
I wouldn't go that far though.
Are you surprised? Because there was a time the NBA always...
No, the new NBA leadership is quite vibrant. I'm sure they're discussing it. They won't put everything, all the ammunition out in the open. But it speaks to the sadness that is Nigeria, that officials do not owe their loyalty to the constitution or to the country. They rather owe it to an individual. Now, the president asks you to look for a law. If you know that it does not exist, you would look him in the face and tell him, Mr. President, with all due respect, no such law.
Because this was posted in a public space on a television.
So since then, go back to him. Yeah, so since then, go back to him.
It's been like 4 days, yeah?
He has lawyers in the Ministry of Justice.
Ugo, you're going to share thoughts.
Yeah, so I was going to say that, I mean, I don't think I'll go that far, but let me just track back, Mr. C's point. When when I watched that, we all watched, Buhari, right? And even when he said it, I was like, where did this come from? It kind of sounds like it was something he just plucked, out of the thin air, right? And that's basically what it's about. I don't even think he's loyal. He sounded like he said in a way that he told them to go and look for a grazing law that he seemed to be aware of, and it was obvious it had to be something that probably has,
because he said
something that's
first
obsolete.
Republic.
Yeah, so it was obvious it was something that's obsolete, right? And that's what I guess lawyers are now being fined, because they themselves have to go and dig, like, does it exist? Because there's just so many laws that today exist here and there that people are not aware of. So it's obvious, this is just one of those laws. So I wouldn't really, completely blame it on Malami per se. I mean, not that he doesn't have any issues. I think the buck stops on the table of the president, man. Because, it's his statement, it's his comments, and I think that yes, perhaps his own age should come out and some clarify things. But it's his comment, and it's proven that I guess maybe perhaps he's not fully aware of things.
I guess we're still searching for the needle in the haystack. Well, let's take a break after this very short break. I promise you we'll take your messages on WhatsApp 0809 444 0981. Freshly pressed 981.
Just that. Oh, I didn't know there was a break. Sorry. That
That's
story is just funny, I'm telling you. I think when I heard Buhari, I said, this man don't know what to talk. It was obvious. He just told them, hey, when I was military ruler, there was one law. Yes, bam, for it.
But at least it should be confirmation of...
And let me tell you, bro, there is nothing the NBA will do. I was speaking with a very close friend of the NBA president over the weekend.
But, sorry. The conversation behind the scenes is actually very interesting. So you need to watch on YouTube, youtube.com/smooth98.1. Smooth FM Lagos, simply type that in the search box and subscribe. Now, to our messages, Yinka Bulu said, unless all the headers were given a copy of the so-called gazette when they're heading down south, or they were told the entire south is a grazing field. Either way, I'm waiting for that for my AGF, who strangely is a son, to publish the gazette since it was quick to compare cows to spare parts. Our law schools need to be privatized, he said. JP says, good morning, freshly pressed. Until the total power sector is relinquished by the federal government and adequate price and guaranteed investment to move forward, we haven't hit 30% power utilization since forever. Joseph says, good morning, Valentine, and a vibrant analyst, Mr. C and Ugo Dre. The reasons of subsidy is simply corruption and insincerity of government will be accountable. NARC is just an observer who has less concern about consumers. But the disclose, we had a horrible experience of cable theft in the transformer. The community had to contribute for replacement, yet the disco officials shamelessly demanded money up to 120,000 for installation of government land. Austin from Satellite Town says, in a country of over 200 million, few white illiterates are dictating for the people. We're here doing the talking while they keep doing the doing. Austin from Satellite Town. Now, Barry Akarakuri says, for the first time, I disagree with Ugo. What has Disco's done? Have improved the distribution facilities? Do they give meters for free? What do they do?
Of course, they give meters for free.
He said private investigators are capitalists. People even have to pay to replace transformers. I do not agree that TCN should be privatized. Okay. 0809-444-0981. Ugo. INEC says, that's the Independent National Electoral Commission, said they've removed polling units from inappropriate places and places of worship around the country. A total of 749 of such inappropriate places, or from such inappropriate places, and more. What are your thoughts regarding this progress?
It's the word inappropriate places. According to the story, this includes places of worship like churches and mosques. Mr. C and I are wondering, many people actually went to palaces and churches. And
when I saw the number, 145 royal palaces.
Yeah,
only units in there.
It's just amazing, man. So I mean, like, who are people voting there? The palace king and stuff like that. I don't know. Anyway, the interesting part of this story is Annex said, that we have been trying for 25 years to increase the number of polling units we have, and I was wondering, wow, I didn't know it was that difficult. Like, how do you for 25 years?
Can I tell you why? Just humor me. It could have been difficult for that long. You know how I'm a really religious country. If we're in a country where we have this number of voting units in palaces and 9 in shrines.
Come on, man. Don't be cynical.
We pray, we fast, we fear God in this country. Remember the fear of God story? Mr. C, the fear of God meter?
Yeah.
That we discussed in
Please, so it's just, but let's congratulate them. So I think now have 176 in 1,846 polling units. But the funny thing is that I was looking at, the definition of a polling unit, and it seems like it's just, an enclosed place where, people can go and vote, not. So I really don't know, why discriminating against churches and mosques. You know what I mean? Because all these shrines are going to say, you can't come. I think it's good. Access to voting areas is very important. I think that in no time in this country has voting ever been more important than 2020. So-called 40 million or so people have on social media. I think that I can't wait personally to see them come out to vote. We've seen that it's very, very important. So if they have created more units, I think that's providing more access for people to vote and exercise right to elect a government that is for them and not for them.
So I must commend them really for the field work they did, because they put a lot of manpower into this.
Very quick thoughts here. So we read that 232 polling units were removed from private properties. What's left? Have you removed all the polling units in all the inappropriate places, or this is the number you removed so far? And if it is not the total number, what is left? And why are we voting in private places?
I mean, they've
Private
corrected the
place,
mistakes.
because you know that Mr. C, they can vote in front of your house, not be private place.
No. In
It's
front of your house is not a private place.
People
It's
vote
not-
in
it's
front
not-
of people's houses. Hey,
not- yes,
just
it
by the
happens.
corner there. Yes,
It's
now.
not a private place.
So what's that?
Your house
Public?
is defined by a wall. So anything outside the wall
Or
is
you
not
don't
your
have a
house.
wall.
It rain fall.
It's not every house that has
Bro.
Thank you so much. Peter from Ikeja says, while it's okay to be suspicious of the present government, we should be mindful that the laws will outlive them. I support regulation and urge civil societies to put pressure on regulators of the law to be fair. As a people, we tend to emphasize rights without talking about responsibilities. We need to be a lot more responsible as people. Thank you for that. Peter Ikabulu says, well, I heard one yesterday. The certain area didn't have light for almost a year, so they came together to contribute 4.3 million naira to buy a transformer, only for them to still pay EKUC to come connect it. They told them to write a letter stating they donated transformer to the company on their own volition. Is that not coercion? Thank you, Inka, for your message. Okwani Pray says, guys, I blame Malami and Buhari. Malami even more. He has a responsibility to educate the president. Dami from Lagos says, President Buhari said by himself that before he became president, our subsidies are fraud, so he too is perpetuating the same trend. Emmanuel says, I wonder why the often use of potent statements, ignorance is not an excuse and law applies to Malami's situation. Emmanuel, thank you. Cisco Delgado says the federal government should develop solar power sector. Simple. So I'll advise private investors should go to green energy or green electricity. I know. Then invest into CCN because that will give the same result for any change in the power sector. Let's move on very quickly to the next story. This one talks about approval of the resumption of the 1 trillion naira FTT land swap scheme. This as for the report from Business Park. What do you know about this?
Yeah, very interesting. That this is coming back. I don't know if you recall sometime. I think just around the time this administration came in 2015, 2016. The scandal that the former minister of the FCT, was accused of basically gaming the system using this land swap. So land swap basically is, in the FCT in Abuja, they provide land and the private investors come in and develop, right? So government basically builds that land as some kind of liability, and then the private sector come and build stuff. And so it's all part of how you develop the FCT. But as you know, anything Nigeria at the time, this turns out to be a money spinner for people who are in charge of doing these things. So, yes, at that time they were accusing the son of guy for owning a lot of properties and even a lot of private sector businessmen. It was just a huge scam, right? I don't know what came out of it. I'm kind of surprised that this is coming back now that they're post the election. I'm not distributing anything, but you know what I mean. So I don't know why.
Times.
Yeah, that this is coming back. I don't know whether a lot of the processes and regulations around it, whether they've tightened it, whether it's a lot more transparent, whether they've been able to, because anything that has to do with land, bro, it always typically ends up in a scam. Because what is going to happen is that if you have the power to give out land for investment, think about it, even imagine if you had the power to give out land, just for people to go.
Land for everybody. I give land to you. Everybody gets a land. But seriously speaking, though, they said after a review of what has transpired over the years and changes made, that the Federal Executive Council have approved and they're going to continue the land swap initiative on the basis of amendments to the procedures, as well as new safeguards introduced so that the investors, the federal government, that is the government, as well as off-takers will be protected.
This is typical government rhetoric. I hope it happens.
Exactly. Details. Devil is in the details. Well, quick touch on the last story for lack of time. This daily paper reports that rail track vandalization police have arrested a syndicate and 36 suspects. Mr. C, your thoughts on this?
It's a very good move by the police that they've arrested these suspects, and I hope that a thorough investigation will be conducted to ensure that we reduce this prevalence, we reduce this incident to its barest minimum.
Well, good news, yes? Glad to hear that. Mr. C, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to have you join us. And Ugo Trey, good to see you, man.
Same here, bro.
Thank you so much. Job well done. Everyone who joined this conversation, all the messages, we really appreciate you. Gary Newton, thank you. He says, well, I think privatization is a good step because on the pain, we're on the pain for power. I will talk more on this at 9 o'clock. Yes. For 9 o'clock, I'll bring back all the conversations we've had this morning, the headlines. So this time around, or that time, I'll open up the phone line for you to call 01448991. Join us next for entertainment inside the Big Vine.
Union Bank, your simpler, smarter bank.
Thank you.
The headlines.
So